A thin stream of powder drifts through the air as the bathroom fan hums like a dying engine, slow, uneven, breathless. In the flickering mirror light, Maureen McCormick presses her trembling hand against the cold porcelain sink. The world once knew her as sunshine incarnate, the golden girl of American television. But here, under the sickly glow of a buzzing bulb, another image emerges. A small silver compact mirror, cracked diagonally across its surface. An image that will follow her, haunt her, define her. A rush of footsteps echoes in the hallway. She freezes. The studio audience once roared for her. Now even the whisper of shoes on linoleum makes her flinch. The compact mirror slips from her fingers, clattering onto the tiles, its shattering echo slicing through the silence like a warning. This isn't Marcia Brady. This is the version no camera was ever allowed to see. Outside those walls, the world believed she lived inside eternal light. Inside this room, she was bargaining with the darkness one breath at a time. And this is the untold truth behind their rise and ruin. Welcome to Hollywood Mysteries. Before the cracked silver compact mirror ever lay in her trembling hands, its shadow already existed long before she knew what powder was, long before Hollywood gave her a name. The fracture began in a small Californian house where the lights were always a little too dim, as if the family feared what might be revealed if they shone too brightly. Maureen McCormick was a child who understood silence before she understood language. She learned early that there were rooms you didn't enter, topics you didn't touch, questions you didn't ask. Her mother drifted through the house like a figure made of glass, fragile, watchful, clutching anxieties she could never name. Her father, calm but heavy with expectation, seemed to carry the whole world on his shoulders, and sometimes he placed a portion of that weight on Maureen without saying a word. The Bongden, the shadow figure, did not come in the form of a villain, but in the unspoken, the withheld, the feared. It was the family's history, their secrets, their emotional fractures that Maureen absorbed without understanding. She sensed something broken, long before she ever broke herself. She grew up in a home where love existed, but it came wrapped in warnings. One moment she was embraced tightly, the next moment told she must never make a mistake that would shame the family. Her mother, terrified of potential scandal, spoke to Maureen not as a child, but as a guardian of the family's fragile image. Our family has things we don't tell the world, Maureen. Things we must carry with us. The words settled in her like a commandment. Protect the image. Protect the family. Protect the silence. This was the moment the first psychological fracture appeared. The belief that her worth depended entirely on maintaining perfection absolute. Unwavering perfection. When Maureen's older sister faced her own crisis, a teenage pregnancy that rattled the household, her mother's reaction carved a deeper wound. She pulled Maureen aside and whispered sharply, "If you ever do this, our family won't survive it." A child's heart doesn't interpret those words rationally. To Maureen, it meant something far heavier. If you fail, everything collapses. If you slip, you are the one who destroys the family. If you aren't perfect, you don't deserve to be loved. That day, the world blurred. Her mother's face, stern with fear, distorted in her young memory like a reflection in a mirror beginning to crack. The same shape that would follow her decades later in the silver compact mirror tossed across a bathroom floor. It wasn't the object she carried that was fractured. It was the belief that she must earn love through flawlessness. The fracture deepened each time she saw her mother tighten at unexpected sounds, or her father's brows knit with worry when bills arrived. She began to read their moods like weather patterns, adjusting herself to ease the tension. Quieter here, brighter there, always smiling, always agreeable. She practiced perfection as if her life depended on it. Then came the moment the outside world intruded, a school talent contest. Maureen, still small enough that her feet dangled from chairs, stood on the makeshift stage in the auditorium. When she sang, the audience fell silent, Not polite silence, but captivated silence, the kind that wraps around a room and inhales slowly. Her parents' faces lit up, for the first time in months, with real hope. Something shifted in her chest. If I shine, they breathe. If I succeed, they smile. If I perform, everything becomes okay. It wasn't the applause that hooked her. It was the relief on their faces. This became her misguided core belief, the one she carried into every audition, every studio contract, every late-night spiral decades later. My value exists only when others need me, admire me, or depend on me. But childhood was not done shaping her. The shadow figure, the one made of family fears, inherited shame, and unspoken mental struggles hovered over her more intensely as she entered show business. Her parents, overwhelmed by the pressures of Hollywood, tried to protect her, but often resorted to rigid oversight. Their love was real, but their fear was stronger. She sensed that every opportunity was both a blessing and a test. When Hollywood called, her father's voice carried pride and pressure in the same breath. Her mother's worries sharpened into a warning that echoed endlessly. Don't be like the others. Don't fall. Don't stray. These moments did not come with raised voices or dramatic outbursts. They came in whispers, glances, and the claustrophobic weight of expectation. Maureen absorbed it all like a sponge, believing that any wrong move could shatter her world. And then, one evening, while her mother was applying makeup in front of a small silver mirror, Maureen watched the way her mother examined her own reflection, not with admiration, but with suspicion, fear, and a quiet despair that no child should ever witness. When her mother accidentally dropped the mirror and a hairline crack split across its surface, Maureen felt her stomach drop. Her mother simply murmured, "Some things break and cannot be fixed," and placed the mirror back in the drawer. That cracked reflection, warped, divided, imperfect, stamped itself into Maureen's memory. Years later, when her own compact mirror shattered on a bathroom floor during her spiral into addiction, it was not just an object breaking. It was the return of that childhood moment, the symbol of a fracture born long before fame. A fracture she never escaped. The first time Maureen walked onto a studio lot, the sun was so bright it bleached the color out of everything. The pavement, the trailers, even the sky. Yet she saw it all through a haze of breathless wonder, as though the air itself shimmered with promise. People hurried past with clipboards, cables, scripts, doors slammed, laughter erupted from corners she couldn't see. For a child who had learned to tiptoe through the world, Hollywood was intoxicating chaos. She wasn't supposed to belong here. At least, that's what the fractured part of her believed, the part shaped by her mother's warnings and her father's quiet pressure. But when a casting director leaned forward with widened eyes and said, "She's got something," Maureen felt something she'd never felt before. Weightlifting. A room inhaling. A future cracking open like a seed. Those words didn't just praise her, they rewrote her destiny. From that moment, Hollywood became the place where she finally felt allowed to breathe. The ascent didn't begin with the Brady bunch. It began earlier, in commercial auditions, where she stood among rows of eager children with perfect hair and bright teeth. She was small, soft-spoken, almost fragile-looking, yet the camera adored her. Directors loved the innocence in her face, the way she listened intently, as though every instruction mattered. They mistook her attentiveness for discipline. She knew it was survival. Her first major breakthrough was a commercial jingle, a simple assignment, a quick song, but for her family, it meant hope. Her father watched the paycheck come in with a mix of relief and pride. Her mother smiled a smile. Maureen rarely saw any more unburdened, even joyful. The living room felt lighter, brighter, as if someone had opened a window. She didn't know it then, but this was the origin of her dependency on external validation, that instinctive feeling that she must keep performing to keep the household intact. Every gig became a lifeline, every callback a blessing. every applause, a promise that things would stay okay. And then came the audition that shifted everything. The room was small, crowded, and painfully bright. Maureen stood in front of a panel of producers who were discussing a new kind of family show. They wanted warmth, humor, wholesomeness, something Americans could fall in love with. When it was her turn, something clicked. She smiled, the kind of smile that made adults melt. She delivered lines with a purity that didn't feel rehearsed. It felt lived. When she finished, the room went still. One executive whispered, "That's her." Another nodded slowly, as if they had discovered a rare, luminous stone. In that moment, Marcia Brady was born. And Maureen McCormick, quiet, anxious, eager to please Maureen, disappeared into the lights. At first, the world of the Brady Bunch felt like a dream. A set filled with laughter, a cast that felt like siblings, adults who treated her like she mattered. The camera loved her. Fans adored her. Producers described her as the show's golden anchor. The bubble of childhood fear seemed to dissolve on set, replaced by carefully lit scenes and scripted family harmony. But the harmony of the Brady house wasn't real, and she felt a strange ache every time the director yelled cut. She saw the genuine affection among the fictional family and wondered why it felt easier, safer, more loving than the real world outside. She didn't have words for the contradiction yet. She only knew that the studio set made sense in ways her home never did. When she laughed on camera, it sounded pure. When she cried in the script, it felt legitimate. Artifice felt real. Reality felt artificial. Hollywood wasn't just a job, it was the first place she felt seen. And that is where the first sin began. The first sin wasn't drugs. It wasn't rebellion. It wasn't romance. It was the belief that the version of her on camera was more valuable than the girl she truly was. This was the decision, small, silent, invisible, that would reshape her entire life. She chose the mirror over the self. The mirror, the audience, the applause, the perfect image that became the truth she tried to live up to. The self, with its insecurities and fears, was pushed deeper into the shadows. Every time she stepped onto the Brady set, the contrast widened. She could feel Marcia's perfection tightening around her like a costume she couldn't take off. Fans clamored for the blonde, cheerful ideal. Producers reinforced her responsibility. Interviews praised her as the epitome of the American girl, and the world demanded she stay that way. As long as she was perfect, life was perfect. It was intoxicating. It was destructive, and it was her choice. Barry Williams, charming and older, became part of that illusion. She fell for him not just because he was handsome, and he was, but because he was the one person who understood what it felt like to live inside that spotlight. Their secret, forbidden almost romance felt like a scene stolen from the show, something imagined into existence by fan fantasies. When they were alone, Maureen glimpsed a version of love that didn't depend on her being perfect. The problem was that she didn't know how to accept love that wasn't conditional. She approached every moment with the fear that one wrong step would break the spell. When the relationship naturally fizzled, two young actors pulled apart by career and circumstance. It hit her with the force of a revelation. If even he doesn't choose me, maybe I'm not enough. This emotional bruise went deeper than heartbreak. It reinforced the fracture formed in childhood. You must be perfect to be loved. Marcia Brady was lovable. Maureen McCormick was not. The turning point, the slow burn into addiction's open door, didn't come in the form of a dramatic fall, but in tiny, incremental shifts. As she grew older, producers began commenting on her weight, her appearance, her responsibility to maintain the image. She internalized every word. The pressure became a whispering voice in her mind, one she could never silence. At the same time, the boundaries between her real identity and her manufactured one blurred. Fans approached her, expecting Marsha's brightness. Interviewers pushed her toward the fantasy. Studio executives subtly and sometimes overtly implied that her value was inseparable from her innocence. But innocence isn't sustainable. Not in Hollywood. Not in adolescence. Not in a fractured heart. And so the first sin deepened. She continued to bury her true self under layers of performance and compliance. She learned to smile while hurting, to nod while doubting, to charm while breaking. She perfected the art of appearing whole, while slowly disintegrating inside. When the show ended, she expected freedom. Instead, she experienced something closer to withdrawal. Without the lights, the scripts, the cameras, she felt emptied out. Her identity, once built entirely around performance, had nowhere to stand. This is the moment, though she didn't know it yet, when Hollywood first extended the darker invitation. The invitation toward escape, toward relief, toward numbness, toward the next chapter, one that would transform the cracked silver compact mirror from symbol to prophecy. But in this phase, in the beautiful and terrible ascent of her early career, one truth dominated everything. The girl who rose into Hollywood's light did so, carrying the shadow of her childhood fracture, and every step upward only sharpened the edges of the fall waiting below. The strange thing about rising is that, at first, it feels like floating. After the Brady Bunch became a cultural phenomenon, Maureen McCormick walked through the world as if her feet barely touched the ground. Airports, malls, sidewalks, everywhere she went, strangers smiled at her like she was family. They didn't see a celebrity. They saw a daughter they had invited into their home every week. Mothers embraced her. Fathers winked at her with paternal pride. Teenagers idolized her. Little girls tried to copy the way she did her hair. Every public interaction confirmed the same illusion. She mattered. She was loved. She was in control. But the reality was far more fragile, and as always, the fragility was hiding behind a smile. The Brady set was its own universe, bright, predictable, controllable. Everything was scripted. The conflicts, the reconciliations, the laughter, even pain was choreographed. The studio lights poured warmth over every scene, and as long as cameras were rolling, she could pretend that life worked the same way. Many child stars struggle with the transition from role to self, but for Maureen, the difference was nearly impossible to perceive. Marsha Brady wasn't just a part she played. She became a mask she wore, even when the makeup came off. The industry rewarded this. Producers adored her professionalism. Publicists admired her image. Fans demanded consistency, and so the illusion of control grew, shimmering like heat on asphalt. She felt invincible in those years, not because she believed she deserved fame, but because fame shielded her from the shadows she had carried since childhood. It smoothed the cracks. It silenced the whispers. It was a balm applied to old wounds, a temporary cure that looked like salvation. But every illusion has a fault line. One evening, after a particularly long day of filming, she lingered on the set long after everyone had gone home. The house, the fictional Brady house, stood eerily still in its artificial domesticity. The staircase, so recognizable. The walls, so comforting. The living room, arranged exactly the same every day. She sat at the kitchen counter, tracing her fingers over the patterned laminate. Everything here was predictable. Everything here was safe. And then she noticed the prop mirror resting on a side table. It wasn't cracked like the one that haunted her adulthood, but something about its unnatural cleanliness, its untouched perfection, unsettled her. She picked it up and saw, not her reflection, but Marsha's. She saw the ideal, the expectation, the version of herself that had been constructed and sold to millions. She whispered, "Who am I when this goes away?" But the set swallowed her voice whole. This moment, small, quiet, unnoticed, marked the emergence of the first cognitive distortion. She believed she could keep the world from changing if she stayed perfect. This was the illusion of control. Outside the studio, Hollywood began to shape her in subtler, more insidious ways. Wardrobe fittings became critiques on her body. Publicity tours became lessons in how to smile through exhaustion. Magazine photo shoots became silent tests of desirability. The pressure to maintain the Brady image intensified as she entered adolescence. Producers didn't say it outright, but it was implied in every look and comment. Stay the golden girl. Don't grow up too fast. Don't change. But puberty didn't care about ratings. Her skin changed. Her hips changed. Her emotions sharpened and tangled. And while other teenagers had the privacy to struggle through awkward phases, Maureen faced it under relentless scrutiny. Fans wanted her wholesome. Studios wanted her marketable. America wanted her frozen in time. She learned to control what she could, her smile, her posture, her words. She learned to shrink herself emotionally to fit the mold. She learned to pretend that everything was fine, even as the pressure built quietly like steam in a sealed room. In interviews, she mastered the art of speaking without revealing anything. Every sentence was carefully chosen, every anecdote sanitized. She became fluent in Hollywood's language of controlled vulnerability, appearing open while revealing nothing real. Her internal monologue, however, told a different story. During a publicity event in New York, she caught sight of herself in a hotel mirror, but the reflection didn't feel like her. The lighting was harsh. Her hair was styled in perfect curls. The dress chosen for her wasn't something she would ever wear off camera. She leaned closer, studying the girl in the glass. Her face looked polished, but her eyes betrayed exhaustion. She whispered, "Hold it together," and smiled at her reflection as if training herself to stay intact. Later that night, she called her mother, not to talk, not to open up, but simply to hear something familiar. Her mother, burdened but proud, reminded her yet again what was at stake. "You're lucky, Maureen. Don't take this for granted." Her mother meant well, but the message echoed the belief that had shaped her since childhood. Your pain is irrelevant. Your success is what matters. And so she swallowed her discomfort and pressed onward. As the Brady Bunch continued, tensions rose behind the scenes. Not dramatic explosions, just tiny, accumulating pressures. The cast grew up. Storylines felt repetitive. The industry demanded evolution, but the show resisted. Maureen felt caught between the world she loved and the future she feared. The pressure to remain flawless intensified. Wardrobe notes, hair adjustments, subtle criticisms that often stung more than overt ones. She began skipping meals, not because she wanted to be thin, but because she believed thinness equated to control. When life felt chaotic, restricting became a way to reclaim power. Each pound lost made her feel momentarily disciplined, victorious. The scale became a private scoreboard in a competition nobody else knew she was playing. But no amount of control over her body could silence the deeper anxiety. Then came the prophecy moment. A kind of omen, subtle, offhanded, but searing. During a rehearsal, an older crew member watched her struggle through a scene and murmured to another, loud enough for her to hear. They grow up, and the magic fades. The word shot through her like ice. Magic fades. Magic fades. Magic fades. She felt the ground shift beneath her. The comment wasn't malicious, it was observational, but it planted a dangerous seed. Fame was temporary. Her value was temporary. Everything she relied on could vanish. It was the moment she first felt truly scared of losing control. To compensate, she pushed harder. She became even more agreeable, even more polished, even more committed to staying the perfect Marcia Brady. But the more obedient she became, the more disconnected she felt from herself. After the show ended, the illusion cracked. Hollywood didn't know what to do with her. Casting directors wanted her to be Marcia forever, but they also criticized her for reminding them of Marcia. She was too associated, too recognizable, too defined by one role. Opportunities slipped away not because she lacked talent, but because she carried the ghost of a character she could never outrun. This sudden invisibility was devastating. She tried audition after audition, but the doors didn't open the way they once had. The spotlight that had once felt like an embrace now felt like a memory. The praise stopped. The fans aged out. The calls slowed. Her illusion of control shattered piece by piece. And then, the mirror returned. One afternoon, in her dressing area before a small audition, she dug through her bag and found the silver compact mirror she'd carried since the final season of the Brady Bunch. Its surface, once polished, now bore a deep diagonal crack, the same shape she remembered from her mother's mirror years earlier. She opened it. The two halves of her reflection didn't align. Her face split by the fracture, youth on one side, strain on the other. She felt a strange mixture of dread and recognition. This was the clarity she had avoided for years. Nothing in her life was whole. Not her identity, not her self-worth, not her sense of control. Still, she pressed her fingers across the broken glass, as if trying to fuse the two halves together. But mirrors don't heal. They only reveal. The next few years felt like walking across increasingly thin ice. She tried to reinvent herself, but agents advised her to lean into the Brady image. Directors wanted nostalgia, not truth. Every audition felt like a test she had already failed. The illusion of control became an addiction of its own. The belief that if she just tried harder, smiled more, shrank more, pleased more, she could regain everything. But deep down, she knew the truth. She had never been in control. Fame had given her structure, not power. Performance had given her applause, not identity. And the child who learned to survive through perfection was now an adult, suffocating under the same rule. This was the real peak of her career. Not success, not fame, but the realization that she had built her entire life on the fragile architecture of others' expectations. And that architecture was about to collapse. When you're standing at the top, the fall is always closer than the summit. The illusion was ending. The shadows she had outrun were catching up. And the cracked silver compact mirror, her lifelong symbol of fracture, was waiting to witness everything. Night presses itself against the motel windows like a living thing, heavy and relentless. A weak sodium street lamp outside flickers in irregular spasms, pulsing pale orange across the stained bedspread and the scattered remnants of a night Maureen McCormick can't fully remember. The air reeks of stale smoke, sweat, and something chemically sweet. On the bathroom floor, just as in the Hook years later, lies the cracked silver compact mirror. But this time, it isn't accidental. Its position on the tile feels ritualistic, as if she placed it there herself, a silent witness to the erosion of her own boundaries. This is not a studio set. This is not a character. This is the version of Maureen no director ever framed, no magazine ever photographed. Hours earlier, she had been in a stranger's car, the city lights slicing across her face as she nodded to music she wasn't really hearing, surrounded by people who didn't care about her name, only that she could pay, only that she could follow them down into the shadows with a smile. People who had no sense of her history or her heartbreak, who didn't grow up watching her glow under studio lights. To them, she was not Marcia Brady. She was just another girl disappearing into the night. And for the first time in her life, that anonymity felt like a strange, aching relief. Because when you remove the mask, you have nothing left to hide behind. And when you have nothing left to hide behind, the darkness doesn't have to chase you. You walk willingly into its arms. Her descent didn't begin with a dramatic crash. It began with subtle tremors, a missed meal, a restless night, a growing sense that the world she once relied on no longer needed her. The auditions that had once made her pulse race with excitement now filled her with dread. Casting directors smiled politely, but their eyes carried a quiet verdict she couldn't outrun. You are not what we want anymore. Hollywood, with its bright lights and bright promises, watched her enter adulthood with an odd kind of disinterest. The producers who once praised her as a national treasure now spoke in lukewarm tones about her future prospects. Some called her too recognizable. Others said she needs to evolve. But the subtext was always the same. The world adored Marsha Brady, not Maureen McCormick. She tried God. She tried to break free from the association. But every script she read felt like a diluted echo of a character she was trying to bury. The industry wanted nostalgia, not transformation. It wanted a symbol, not a woman. It wanted her to stay frozen in time, even as she was unraveling inside. And so she drifted toward the only world that didn't demand perfection, the world of escape. Cocaine entered her life not with a roar, but with a whisper, a friend, a party, a quiet suggestion that turned into a quiet ritual. The first hit didn't feel like rebellion. It felt like release. The constant hum of anxiety that had vibrated in her chest since childhood went silent for a moment. The weight of expectation dissolved. The fear of failure evaporated. She felt, briefly, like she could breathe again. But the relief was temporary, and addiction has a way of rewiring the soul. The small rituals became bigger ones. The occasional hit became a constant need. Highs blurred into come-downs. Days slipped into nights without distinction. She lost track of time, lost track of auditions, lost track of reality itself. Her body began to respond accordingly, shaking hands, restless legs, dry skin stretched tight over sharp bones. She dropped to around 45 kilograms, a fact she barely registered except when wardrobe assistants looked at her with thinly concealed alarm. Clothes hung on her like costumes borrowed from someone smaller. Her face grew hollow, her eyes darker, her expression thinner. Still, she pressed forward, telling herself she was fine. Addiction always begins with a lie, but the world around her noticed. During a failed audition for a major role, a moment that could have redefined her career, the casting director watched her stumble through lines, her voice trembling, her eyes unfocused. She tried to regain composure, gripping the script until her knuckles whitened, but the cocaine in her bloodstream made concentration impossible. When she walked out, she knew she had blown it. Not because she wasn't talented, but because she could no longer control herself. That night, she made a vow to quit. By morning, she was using again. Hollywood, for all its glamour, is merciless to those in free fall. The opportunities dried up quickly. Calls weren't returned. Meetings were postponed indefinitely. Her reputation began to slip through fingers like sand. People whispered. Agents distanced themselves. Directors avoided the risk. The loneliness that had once been a mild ache grew into a crushing pressure. She tried dating again, looking for affection in unfamiliar arms, but found only hollow echoes of connection. She fell in with people who liked being seen with the former Marsha Brady, people who encouraged the spiral she was already trapped in. One night, after too many lines, she heard someone say the sentence that would scar her memory. "I don't love Maureen. I love being next to Marsha." It was the cruelest truth she had ever heard, not because it was new, but because it confirmed the fear that had lived inside her since childhood. She could be adored only when she wasn't herself. The spiritual collapse came later, at a speed that terrified even her. There were days she didn't eat at all, nights she didn't sleep, moments when she looked at herself in the mirror and saw nothing but a faint outline of the girl the world had once adored. Her bones pressed sharply against her skin, her eyes were ringed with purple shadows, and she spoke with the jittery cadence of someone living in fast forward. Her behavior became erratic. She bailed on commitments. She lied to people she loved. She avoided her family, too ashamed to tell them that she was losing herself by degrees. She lived paycheck to paycheck, spending most of her money feeding an addiction that fed on her in return. Each time she snorted another line, she promised herself it would be the last. Each time, she believed it. That's the thing about addiction, it convinces you that the darkness is a friend. And then came the point of no return. The secret she hid. The moment that changed everything. She had been offered a chance. A real chance. To return to the spotlight. A clean slate. A fresh beginning. It wasn't a massive role, but it was a foothold back into the world she still desperately loved. The kind of opportunity struggling actors would kill for. But the night before the audition, she spiraled. Hard. The motel room where she stayed was dim, the curtains drawn, the carpet sticky beneath her feet. She told herself she'd only use enough to calm her nerves. Enough to steady her. Enough to survive the next 12 hours. But addiction doesn't bargain. It consumes. She lost track of how much she used. She lost track of time entirely. When she finally woke up, the sun was already high. She had missed the audition. Not late. Not almost. Gone. Completely gone. She stared at the clock in disbelief, a numb, icy dread pooling in her stomach. She had destroyed her own second chance. This wasn't bad luck. This wasn't misfortune. This wasn't Hollywood rejecting her. This was self-destruction. For the first time, she couldn't blame anything but herself. That was the moment she truly broke. When she returned home later that night, trembling and hollow, she found Michael Cummings waiting for her. He looked at her, not with anger or disappointment, but with a grief so raw it pierced her more deeply than any insult. He studied her face, her trembling hands, the dilation in her pupils. And then he said the sentence that hit harder than any intervention, harder than any rehab lecture, harder than any industry criticism. "I can't watch you kill yourself." It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a plea. It was a truth spoken without judgment, without drama, without theatricality. And that was exactly why it gutted her. In that moment, she saw clearly how far she had fallen, not in fame, but in spirit. She realized that the cracked silver compact mirror she had been carrying since her Brady years wasn't just a symbol, it was an omen. A reflection of the fracture born in childhood, deepened in stardom, and now splintering under the weight of addiction. She fell to her knees, sobbing not the cinematic sobs of a scripted breakdown, but the kind that comes from a soul-scraping rock bottom. She told him everything. Every lie. Every relapse. Every fear. Every secret. It was the first honest moment she had allowed herself in years. And it terrified her. Because honesty meant she could no longer hide behind illusions. The spiral had reached its lowest point. The secret had been exposed. The point of no return had arrived. She would either claw her way back to life, or she would vanish beneath the weight of her own silence. The world would later learn about recovery, about redemption, about the long, painful ascent from the ruins of addiction. But in this chapter, in the suffocating darkness of her downfall, recovery was not yet a promise. It was only a faint possibility, a distant spark in an ocean of night. And as she sat on the bathroom floor, her reflection split in two by the cracked silver compact mirror, she did not know which version of herself would survive. Morning arrived softly, too softly for a life that had spent so many years waking to applause, studio lamps, and the familiar rhythm of places, everyone. Now the sun filtered weakly through half-closed blinds, illuminating a living room that bore no trace of stardom, no glossy photographs on the walls, no awards on mantels, no framed posters of the Brady Bunch, just a couch, a table, a few folded blankets, and the fragile quiet of a woman rebuilding herself from the inside out. After the spiral, after the motel floors and missed auditions and the shattering confession to Michael, the world did not suddenly become kinder. It simply became quieter. Silence, once terrifying, turned into a companion stern but oddly patient. Maureen learned to live with that silence as though it were a new language. It did not cheer, did not punish, did not demand perfection. It simply was. Her recovery did not start with optimism. It started with exhaustion, deep, bone-heavy exhaustion, the kind that settles in after years of running from yourself. She entered treatment not because she felt strong enough to face herself, but because she no longer had the strength to keep falling. Rehab was not a dramatic, cinematic awakening. It was a series of small, unglamorous moments. Paper cups of water, fluorescent lights that buzzed, chairs arranged in circles, voices trembling through confessions. Maureen listened more than she spoke. She learned that shame evaporates slightly when shared. She learned that addiction does not discriminate. There were mothers, lawyers, teenagers, widowers, all carrying their own cracked mirrors in their pockets. When she finally spoke aloud, "I don't know who I am without the character people loved," the room didn't gasp. The world didn't tilt. Someone simply nodded, and another person squeezed her hand. It was the first time in years she felt seen without performance. The shadows did not retreat quickly. Some mornings she felt steady, other mornings fractured. She had to relearn simple things: how to eat regularly, how to sleep without chemical aid, how to look at her own face in the mirror without flinching. She kept the cracked silver compact mirror in a drawer, unable to throw it away, but unwilling to use it. It had become both a reminder and a warning, a symbol she carried not out of attachment, but out of honesty. At home, Michael became a quiet anchor rather than a savior. He didn't hover, he didn't lecture. He simply stayed long enough for Maureen to feel, for the first time, that someone loved her without the condition of perfection. Their relationship was not fairy tale restorative, it was work. Real work. There were arguments, apologies, long nights, and days when she felt tempted to disappear again. But bit by bit, trust formed. Bit by bit, she believed she might be allowed to exist as a flawed human being, rather than an image projected onto millions of TV screens. Her career did not immediately revive. In fact, it stalled. Doors that once opened with a smile now opened cautiously, if at all. Hollywood has a long memory and a short patience. Casting directors who once praised her now offered only polite small talk. Some roles came, but they were small guest appearances, short arcs, nostalgic nods. They were not the triumphant return she once fantasized about. Yet strangely, these roles grounded her. They reminded her she still had talent, even if the world no longer considered it extraordinary. While some former child stars spent their adulthood chasing the ghost of their youthful fame, Maureen slowly learned to let the ghost exist without trying to resurrect it. She accepted that the world adored Brady more than Maureen McCormick, and that this did not have to be a curse. It could simply be a fact of her life, a chapter, not a sentence. The real transformation came not from Hollywood, but from within the small, ordinary rituals she built. Making tea in the morning, reading a chapter before bed, going for walks where no one recognized her, calling her parents not out of obligation, but out of choice. Her relationship with her mother thawed into something more human, less brittle. They spoke about fear more openly, about anxiety, about expectations. The conversations were not perfect, but they were real, finally real. Years later, when she decided to confront her past in her memoir, she took the cracked compact mirror out of the drawer. She placed it on the table, studying the way the diagonal fracture divided her reflection into two uneven halves. She did not cry. She did not look away. She simply acknowledged it, the symbol of every fracture she had lived with since childhood. And then, quietly, deliberately, she closed the mirror, not in denial, not in shame, but in acceptance. She understood now that the mirror had never been an omen or a curse. It had been a map, a record of the places she had broken and the places she had healed. The light didn't erase the crack, but the crack no longer defined her. In the stillness of her living room, with the world long moved on from the Brady years and her image freed from the expectations of millions, Maureen finally felt a strange, delicate peace settle into her chest. It wasn't the peace of triumph. It wasn't the peace of fame. It was the peace of someone who had learned to live without the applause. A soft, private, human peace. The lights had gone out. But for once, she could see herself clearly. For decades, the world held an image of Maureen McCormick that was bright, polished, and uncomplicated, a girl bathed in studio sunshine, framed by perfect hair and perfect smiles. But legacies are rarely defined by the roles that made someone famous. They are shaped by what remains after the applause fades, by the truths unearthed when the lights finally stop burning. For Maureen, that truth is far quieter, far more complex, and far more human. The public often misunderstood her. They believed she lived inside the seamless optimism of the Brady Bunch, that the warmth on screen reflected the warmth within. They assumed the girl who played Marcia was protected by some invisible shield from the chaos that consumes ordinary lives. But her real story was not about eternal light. It was about the courage to step out from beneath it. What she truly wanted was never more fame or more nostalgia. It wasn't a return to the pedestal or an attempt to reclaim a spotlight that had long shifted elsewhere. What she wanted, more than anything, was something she was never allowed as a child star. Permission to be imperfect. Permission to grow. Permission to exist outside the frame. She learned, slowly and painfully, that her legacy did not have to be bound to the idealized girl the world adored. She did not have to compete with her younger self. She did not have to uphold the illusion of innocence for people unwilling to see her as an adult with real wounds and real strength. Hollywood often reduces its icons to symbols, freeze-dried moments, faces flattened into nostalgia, but Maureen's story resists that flattening. Her life stands as an example of what happens when the machine demands a fantasy and the human being inside it has to carry that fantasy like a burden, not out of ambition, but out of fear. And yet, she did not let the story end in ruin. She chose honesty. She wrote her memoir. She allowed the world to see the cracks, the fractures, the shadows that shaped her. In doing so, she reclaimed something no studio could manufacture: her voice. Her legacy is not a cautionary tale, though it contains warnings. It is not a tragedy, though it knows darkness intimately. It is something quieter, more resilient. The story of a woman who survived the image that tried to consume her. She showed that child stars do not have to remain trapped in amber. They can evolve, break, rebuild, redefine. They can grow older without disappearing. They can confront the ghosts of their own making and still find peace waiting on the far side. Long after Hollywood stopped expecting her to shine, she learned how to shine for herself. And that is what remains. A life lived with more truth than glamour, more strength than spectacle. The fans who grew up with her now see her not as a symbol of perfection, but as a survivor. Someone who walked through the narrow passage between fame and self-erasure and emerged with a deeper understanding of both. As for the cracked silver compact mirror, it remains part of her mythos, an object that once reflected division, distortion, and fracture. But in the final telling, it becomes something else. Not a curse, not a prophecy, a reminder. A small, imperfect artifact that holds the truth she spent years outrunning. Light and shadow were always meant to coexist. There is no perfect version of her. There never was. But there is a whole one. And that, in the end, is enough. A legacy built not on the illusion of who she was, but on the honesty of who she became. A story built on light, shadow, and the price of becoming unforgettable.